Hello, Lions fans, and welcome on back to another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. And as you can see, I clearly have my hat back on. I know that some people pointed out that they were surprised I had hair. They were like, hey, you're not wearing your hat. And it's like, yes, I understand. It's something that I forgot back in my barracks bay from where I'm currently stationed at for the temporary time being. I just forgot it, and you know what? I, didn't just go back and get it, so I just decided to record without the hat. And some people thought it was pretty interesting, so it is what it is. But currently, right now, as you can already see, I'm, again, not in my normal element. I wish I was. Currently, actually, I'm recording in an empty DFAC. For those that were in the military, they obviously know what that term means. But, so, here's the thing, folks. We've already kind of talked quite a bit about the whole game with the Rams. And you know what? I've talked about the defense. I've talked about the offense. I've talked about several things about what happened during that game. And I'll just say this right now. Again, I know that there were people who said, you know what, David, you're overreacting. It's just the first game. These guys are going to take time. It's going to take time from the build cohesion and all this stuff. And it's like, I understand that. I get it. I know that most of these guys did not play during the preseason. I understand that for a lot of people, that is something that is going to factor into what happened with the game. And I do factor it in. It's just that for me, because of what happened during the game, how the Rams were, going into that game as far as, injuries and their situation, I just thought our team was going to do a lot better. And that's all I'm going to say about the Rams, because the fact that I thought the Lions should do a lot better against the Rams, I'm going to tell you this. The Lions are going to have to do a lot better against the Bucs, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, and particularly in terms of the defensive secondary. Because I'm telling you this right now, this upcoming week that we have against the Buccaneers, that defensive secondary of ours is going to have a magnificently huge freaking challenge to try and handle. Because last week, let's understand something here, folks. When we played Matthew Stafford and the Rams, the majority of that game, Matthew Stafford had a reshuffled offensive line with barely any sort of competent blockers, especially on the left side of the formation. He had virtually only one wide receiver through the majority of the game because Puka Nacua, I think, got knocked out of the game midway through the second quarter or something like that. So he only had Cooper Kupp. He had a backup tight end. And you know what? He was also dealing with an ankle injury. And yet, despite all of those things going against him, he still carved us up for over 300-plus yards. Okay. Well, now the Lions secondary has to go up against Baker Mayfield and his offensive weaponry, which includes Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, I think it is Cade Otton, who's the tight end, and also Trey Palmer, who's kind of like their third-man wide receiver. Okay, I'm going to tell you this right now. Just on the surface level, the Bucs are already way more heavily talented in terms of who they're going to have available for this game than the Rams. And like I said, Matthew Stafford and that Rams offense, they put up 300 yards passing on us. That's a problem. But here's where it gets even worse. Everybody already knows that Matthew Stafford's a great quarterback. Not going to deny this. Not going to debate it. But I watched that Buccaneers game against the Commanders when the Bucs were at home, and I can tell you this right now. Even if you didn't watch the Bucs game and you only watched the highlights, or maybe you only looked at the stat line sheet, you would instantaneously figure out just how damn good this Bucs passing attack was against the Washington Commanders. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand the Washington Commanders are not a really good team. They're rebuilding. They've got a rookie quarterback. They've got a lot of rookies playing on their roster right now. So obviously they're not the best team in the world. But going back to what I said at the very beginning about how people wanted to talk about, it's the fact that, the team hasn't played a whole lot for the first week of the year. They haven't played any preseason, so it's going to take time for cohesion. Okay, here's one problem I'm having with that argument. You take a look at how the Bucs passing offense did in that game against the Commanders, even if it was against, that defense that Dan Quinn had out there, and, the fact that the Bucs offense also did not play all preseason. Baker Mayfield, what was his stat line? Oh, that's right. It was 24 of 30 for 80 completion percentage rate, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 146.4 passer rating, with an 86.1 QBR. So Baker Mayfield, who didn't take a single snap during the entirety of the preseason, neither did Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, or virtually most of anybody else on that Bucs offense, they go out there and they put on an absolutely magnificent offensive showing against the Commanders. And again, Commanders are what they are. But again, let's go back to the Rams' defensive secondary. Oh, that's right. Tre'Davious White, who was their starting corner, the only starting corner that they had, he didn't play all preseason. They were without Darius Williams. Kobe Turner was playing with an injury, so I consider that pretty much even keel at that point. Despite the fact that the Commanders had an inexperienced secondary for the most part, the Rams were pretty much dealing with a depleted secondary from the fact that either guys weren't playing because of injury or they were playing with injury. So that's why I'm saying what I'm saying, that the Lions secondary, they have to have a very quick turnaround when it comes to this game, because I'm sorry, when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are the guys you're facing, you've got your hands full. You're going to have a mammoth of a task trying to stop those two, because first and foremost, Mike Evans is the guy that makes the big ball catches. Like, he goes up, makes those 50-50 catches. He's the guy that gets all those highlights. And he's very good at what he does. I mean, in the game that I was just talking about against the Commanders, Mike Evans had 5 receptions for 61 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 12.2 average. Tells me that anytime the Bucs got towards the end zone, freaking Baker Mayfield was looking for Mike Evans all day long. He was throwing it to the guy that could go up and make those tough grabs, and that's exactly what Mike Evans did. Then you take a look at Chris Godwin. If you did actually watch the broadcast of the game, there was 2 things very specific in that game about Chris Godwin that really stood out to me because of the fact that we were playing the Rams that same night. First and foremost, in the broadcast itself, the announcers were saying that the way that the Bucs had started using Chris Godwin in their offense was the exact same way that the Rams used their wide receivers, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, in their offense. And I thought that was a very interesting, point that the announcer was making, until I saw what Chris Godwin was doing. Chris Godwin had 8 targets in that game. He caught all 8 of them. But the majority of his targets that he caught were on third down conversions. I think he had 4 or 5 catches converting for third downs. Pretty much, he's not the guy that's going to make the big catches like, Mike Evans. But when it comes time for a guy to have it play, it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, or whatever. You got to have a guy, convert the downs. They're going to Chris Godwin because he's the guy that makes those catches and converts when you got to have it. And again, when you take a look at Chris Godwin's stat line, he was 8 receptions for 83 yards, 1 touchdown, and 10.4 in average. So every reception he had, for the most part, he was picking up a first down. That's exactly what that tells me. So again, when you take a look at the dynamic of this Bucs offense, this Lions secondary is going to have to severely, make a quick adjustment. It's going to have to start quickly growing up, in a sense, growing and building that cohesion very quickly. Now, I will say this. There are a couple of things that are going to make this potentially easier for the Lions, especially their secondary. Number 1, when I was watching the game against the Bucs for the Commanders, I did notice that the Commanders' defensive line was able to get pressure on Baker Mayfield. They were able to get into the pocket and they were able to disrupt him. The problem was, kind of like how our problem was against Stafford and the Rams, is that Baker Mayfield was able to escape and make plays. So I'm going to say this right now. The defensive line of the Lions is going to have to find ways to not only pressure Baker Mayfield like they did Stafford, but unlike Stafford, they're going to have to make sure that, hey, we actually sack the quarterback. We bring him down and not just let him dance around and find somebody to throw to. And for me, I think that the Lions are going to have a big piece in their defense that's going to help in this factor, because Dan Campbell has already said that this week is the week they're expecting that DJ Reader is going to come back, and he should be able to come back at full strength, in my opinion. Well, here's what I'm going to say about DJ Reader. DJ Reader is such a big presence in the middle of a defensive line that you cannot just simply leave him 1v1. You're going to have to double team him. Well, like I've said in the past, double teams means mismatches somewhere else, which means Davenport, Hutch, McNeil, or maybe there'll be an open blitzing gap for a linebacker, whatever the case might be. Somebody's going to have a mismatch, which is going to allow an opportunity for our defense to not only get pressure, but potentially sack Baker Mayfield. So that right there, I think, is going to help our secondary, because if we can get pressure and sack Baker Mayfield, then it does not really matter what the thunder he does as far as, throwing the ball, because if he's getting constantly put on his backside, that's going to be an issue. However, though, I also know that the Bucs are going to take a look at the film that obviously was there with the Rams and the Lions, which I'm going to say this right now. Because of the technological limitations, I'm very upset that I don't have the ability to really show you guys what I get to see as far as the film review. But I'm going to tell you this right now. The Bucs are definitely going to notice that, okay, if Stafford can hit guys very quickly in the flats and just go up and down the field and still pick up 300 yards, they're going to definitely keep that in their back pocket as a possible option if other things start to go awry. Now, I will say this as well. The one thing that I think the Lions do have going for them in this game is the fact that, one, again, they are at home. And number two, the fact of the matter is that this is still primarily the same defense that last year, except for the secondary that beat the Bucs with Mike Evans, with Chris Godwin, and all the rest of these fellas in that freaking divisional playoff game. So for me, it's like, okay, so long as we are able to continue to play within ourselves, we don't let ourselves get beat, we continue to play the style of football that we play, plus Aaron Glenn is actually willing and able to make adjustments when it's actually supposed to happen rather than waiting until the last blessed minute, I think that we should be able to have a decent showing on defense. Again, I understand there's a lot of moving parts in this defense that are brand new that were not here last year, and it's going to take time to build cohesion. It's going to take time to get all on the same page. But I'm simply saying this. When you're going up against an offense like the Bucs, and you're going up against wide receivers like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and Baker Mayfield has the game that he just had against the Commanders, you already know you're going to be in for a very tough week of preparation and practice to get ready for what is coming to your doorstep on Sunday. And I'm telling you this right now, our defense is going to have to step up and find ways to stop this Buccaneers offense, because, again, it's not just the defense. The offense is also trying to get on the same page. But I'm telling you this right now, we saw that our offense, even when it was out of sorts and completely out of sync, could still score 26 points. So it's like, okay, our offense is also getting into cohesion. It's also getting back into sync. But our offense, even despite all that, can still manage to put up a decent amount of points. So realistically, what it's going to come down to is, can our defense find a way to restrain the freaking Buccaneers offense, so that way we're not getting into a damn shootout? That's really what this comes down to, and that's why this is a daunting task, especially for the Lions secondary that is still trying to get on the same page with everybody. So, I'm telling you this right now. I'm very, very interested to see what the Lions secondary does in this game against the Bucs, especially against the wide receivers. I'm very interested to see how we're able to get better pressure and the ability to sack the quarterback, unlike what we did against the Rams and Stafford. Because if we can start putting these pieces together, we are going to have a much better outcome. We're going to have a much better result than what we saw on Sunday. Now, obviously, I still want the win like we had on Sunday, but what I want is a quality win. I'm not expecting perfection, folks, but I want to see a quality win from a team that is considered a Super Bowl caliber quality team. Now, obviously, that takes time, but for me, it's like, okay, I want to see it much more quickly than necessarily waiting 3, 4, 5 weeks before we're starting to get on the same page. Because again, these guys have had all offseason to practice. It shouldn't be taking this long, or it shouldn't take as long as 4 weeks before, oh, we're now suddenly finally on the same page. But anyway, folks, I think I've done a pretty good job of explaining what I think the defense needs to do in this kind of scenario. So I'm going to end the episode and say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these 3 things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, again, I want to highly encourage y'all to subscribe. But also, I want to encourage y'all to do this. If you have not yet done so, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon as well, so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. And I also want to say this, for all my Lions fans that you know have been longtime viewers, or you just tuned in for the very first time, I hope y'all enjoyed the content. I hope y'all are having a blessed day. And I also hope that everything in your life is going good, and you got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.